maximizing your library's discovery, how NC Live member libraries use Summon. And we have a couple of co-presenters here today. So I'm Devin Waugh, the instruction librarian for NC Live, and I'll be able to talk about some of the resources that we have available on our website for Summon users. And I have Jake Vaccaro here from Meredith College.
Hello, I'm Jake Vaccaro. I'm Research Instruction Librarian at Meredith College. I'm going to talk about a few ways that we're using Summon or thinking of using Summon.
I'm Zach. I'm a e-resources librarian or electronic librarian at Rowan Cabarrus Community College.
And I'm Taylor Shafkus. I'm a customer success consultant here at Clarivate, formerly Ex Libris. And my main role is to help customers like you make the most out of your Summon and 360 services, whether that's consulting on best practices or providing helpful tips and tricks.
All right, and to start us off, we'll go in this order. So Jake will provide a live demo of the preview environment. He'll cover best bets, pre-scope searches versus scopes. Zach will cover how Rowan Cabarrus Community College uses the automatic content ingestion feature. Taylor will provide updates on new features in the tool and then recommended best practices. And I'll wrap things up with, again, where to find Summon information on the NC Live website. So Jake, if you want to start us off.
Okay, happy to. So I just want to talk about a few things that we do with Summon, and some of them may be things that you've seen in other webinars that you do already. So, but hopefully some things will be new or suggest things that you could do. And I wanted to start with talking about the Summon preview environment. And so, and maybe used it before, but I think it's a really cool thing because unlike a lot of resources, Summon gives you the opportunity to really try almost anything in a very real environment and see how it's going to look. And so this used to be something that was available only when an update was coming, and the idea is that you could try the new features and see how they work, and then it wouldn't go away. But it's for a while it's been fully available. So basically, you can try any sort of configuration pretty much you want with your library Summon implementation. It'll talk to your actual holdings, and you can see how things will look without ever having your users see it, basically, or ever like exposing them to what you're trying to do. So it's a really good resource, and I can show you a little bit about what it looks like if you haven't used it. So if we go to, I can just go ahead and share my screen really quickly. Let's see. Sure. Sorry. Okay, can you see that okay? This is the Summon preview. Oh, this is the Summon preview environment. And what you might notice, I'm just moving my Zoom bar here, sorry. What you might notice that it looks like the regular Summon admin very much. In fact, it looks maybe almost too much, because if you go to the Summon admin, it looks like this. Hang on a sec. Yeah, so it looks like this. If you go to the admin console, it looks like this. They're really similar. The main difference is that it says preview here. Otherwise, they look identical. And so if you haven't used it before, the way you can access it, if you're a Summon admin, is to, on the top bar here, click on preview environment, and that will open up. That will open up this other environment. One thing I've found, and it really, as you can see, it has access to all this stuff, and it basically is only impacting your preview. And what your preview basically is it looks just like your Summon. So this is our regular Summon, and this is our preview Summon. And so one thing I'd recommend, one thing about the preview environment that can be a little confusing is how similar the admin looks to the preview. As far as I can know, the only difference is this little red preview here. So it can be a little tricky to keep track of what you're in. And one thing I found very helpful when using the preview environment is to make them look a little different, so you can remember which one you are. So you can change, like, for example, the color. You can change the little icon on your tabs, and if you can see that, to use. And so that basically can tell you that you're working in preview instead of in your Summon environment. So if I do a search in Summon, I'll just search for happiness, because I like happiness. As you can see, they look pretty much the same. But in our preview environment, we have some things that we don't have in the current one. So we're thinking about using some custom panels on the side, and we haven't put them in yet, but they're just there in preview. So they're going to be there. They're going to show up in preview. And if I wanted to mess around with them, see how they look, I could just change that in the preview, the exact same way that I do in the regular Summon. So that's if you haven't used that, I think it's a really powerful thing to be able to do. The changes propagate really quickly, like just in a couple of minutes. So you don't have to wait with the Client Center for the next day to see what it looks like, and you can really do a lot with it. So I recommend using the preview environment to its fullest extent to just kind of experiment with what you can do with Summon and how it looks. It was very helpful to us when we were trying to figure out how to make our chat look and things like that. And so the stuff I'm going to be talking about, some of it's stuff that we are using, and some of the stuff is stuff we maybe haven't yet. So I might be in the preview environment to show you that as well. Okay, so let me just stop my share for a sec. And I want to talk a little bit about using best bets in Summon and how we use them. So let's see, can people see the slides? Let's see. Sorry, I didn't. Oh, and one thing about the preview environment, for better or for worse, one thing you can't do with it is that you can't see like how changing your client center holdings will affect it. So that is a whole different process. It takes that day or a few days to restart. So that's one thing you can't test in the preview environment, but almost everything else I think you can. So I want to talk a little bit about best bets and how we use those. And so best bets basically are a way that you can make certain things appear in your summon search results. Things which could be part of your collection, they could be part of your library's website, they could be entirely different things. But basically, it's a way to sort of force things to appear when someone puts a certain string of text into your into the summon search. And the way it works is that if you go into the admin, you'll be able to find some tags. So let me share my screen again. Sorry about going back and forth with this. So if you go to Recommender in the Summon admin, and hopefully it'll load pretty quickly. All right, it did, yeah. There's two things you can see here. One is the database recommender. And so this we have turned on, and I think it's worth turning on. Basically, what this is anything that you have set up as a database in your knowledge base, in your client center knowledge base. A lot of these, not all by any means, but a lot of them have tags that are attached to them so that if someone searches for a thing related to like economics, it'll prompt them to maybe go to the American Economic Association, or if someone searches for psychology, maybe like psych articles will pop up. So that's that's sort of, those are basically kind of universal, that you can change the tags, you can adjust the tags, but it's kind of like the same for everybody in some ways. And it only really works for things that are in your databases. Some of those are a little. So, but best bets, there's a little more control, and basically you can work with anything at all. And so you decide the tags that will provoke someone to find this, and you decide like what they see when they do it. So we use this for a couple of things. We certainly do it, if someone like looks for our hours in Summon, they will find them. If someone looks for our archives department, they'll find them. So parts of our website that maybe are important that people might be looking for. But also we found it helpful to lead people to publications that we know they're searching for, that if they, because people's instinct is to search for, like, if they're looking for a certain journal or magazine or something, just put it into the Summon search, put it in the OneSearch. And if they just do that, oftentimes they won't get it. They'll get like a random articles from Summon. So we know, for example, that for a long time, people were looking for Women's Wear Daily a lot. It was an assignment for one of our fashion classes. They had to use it. And we knew from our statistics that people were putting in Women's Wear Daily and WWD. So we wanted to make sure they would find that if they put it in. More recently, we're noticing a lot of people searching for Harvard Business Review. And again, if you search for Harvard Business Review, you won't get the journal in Summon, at least the way we had set up, you won't. So if we go to now our Summon, if we search for Harvard Business Review instead of happiness, there should be. Sorry. Yep. So this will take you directly to it, along with the database recommender in this case. And since we put in other tags, we know people are searching for HBR too. That should work. Let me see. Yep. And so that works too. And so another thing we're using is with them. So if you search for like News and Observer, we have now a subscription to it, online subscription. It's buried pretty deep on our library's homepage, but it's pretty relevant to our library. So we want to make sure that people search for it, they can find it in Summon. And actually, I think this is useful too, because not only is it good for people serendipitously finding it, but if I want to tell someone how to get there, now I can tell them just put this in the Summon into OneSearch and they'll find it. And again, because you can specify the tags, you can think about N and O and News and Observer. We use the ampersand or not, things like that. So, and it catches all of them, and it's not case sensitive or anything like that. So that's been really helpful. And yeah, another nice thing is that, so this assignment, this doesn't get much use anymore. This assignment's not there anymore. People aren't searching for it. But because it's only only when it's prompted will it come up, you don't need to worry about cleaning them out, basically, as long as they're accurate. So anyway, so those, I think best bets are really useful for getting people to parts of your website or parts of your collection that they're going to have a hard time getting to otherwise. And we found them to be pretty useful. Okay, sorry, let me talk a little more about other stuff. So let me go back to, actually, let's go back to the slides. So I'll stop my share. So another way of, Thanks, Devin. Another way of getting people where you want them to go is to create summons search boxes that are pre-scoped. And we use these a lot. And there's a couple of different ways to do this. And basically, it's a way that you can then make a search box or a search widget that is with certain things pre-selected. Really common to do it for content types. So you can have a book search or a video search or things like that. Really common to do it for, but you can do it for basically anything. So you could do it by discipline as well. I know on NC Live's website, they have like discipline searches that can search NC Live resources by discipline, but you can do this for your own library as well. So if you want to have a certain, a search that basically, and again, well, I can talk about the examples actually. So first I'll say that there's some code, there's some websites that you can send you for instructions on how to do it. There's a widget creator in the admin, but there's also a way that you can, that you can create HTML code snippets. And there may be a better site for this, but we have found that sometimes the widget creator, the Java in it doesn't work with where we want to put it. And so this is kind of a simpler way. I'm just using the HTML code snippets to make it do what you want. And I'm very happy to help with that and show how we've done it. Some of it's just by like reverse engineering searches and figuring out what they're asking for. Okay, let's go on to the next one. And so we have a lot of different things we've done with this, and I won't like do the search and make you see it, but we have our streaming audio search is a content type search. One thing that we like is we have a search for reference sources. So that's content that's kind of in a lot of different places like Credo and Gale and PrintBooks, and also in eBook Central. So if we have a search that basically searches for anything considered referenced by Summon, that content type, and you can just search for that. And there's really no great way except, people can always do a search and then find a reference on the side, but it doesn't show up, very visibly in the facet, and it's hard to get to. So this is a really much easier way to direct people to our reference collection. And everything that could be considered reference. And certainly you can do it for locations too. So a search of our children's collection. Today I was showing students a search that just does books on education. So, some people could like that as well. So that's an example of and really the sky's the limit. You can use these as many ways as you want. And we found them to be pretty handy. So that's one option for taking people to a certain kind of thing. The other option is this relatively new feature called search scopes. And so it sounds similar, and it took me a little bit to figure out what the difference was. But basically search scopes are ways that you can sort of hardwire your summon search bar to be able to do a search like this, a scoped search. So instead of making a widget that lives in one place and does a certain thing, this is something that basically anywhere people are searching Summon, they'll have the option to do a search that's more limited, like to a certain location or a certain content type or something like that. And I can show you how to get to these. So let me go back and let me share my screen again. And I'm going to do this in the preview because we haven't actually set them up in our production instance yet, but we might. So if you go down this very long list of things and find search scopes, and you can get them in the preview, basically what you could do is, this is the ones I've sort of made already. You can add a new scope. It gives you a name you can give it. I'll just call it Scopy. Whether you want to show a description in the search results or not, a description, things like that, I won't make you do it. And then what you want it to search for. So if we only wanted to search for things on, I don't know, anatomy, for example, anatomy and physiology, you could do that. Obviously, that's not really what you're going to want to do. And then save settings. So as our preview environment, so this goofy search can go and no one will notice it. But basically, in a couple of minutes, I'll now have an option that looks like this in my preview environment. Let me go ahead, back to our preview environment. And these are the ones that are set up already. So those are the ones that you maybe just saw in the collection. And so they show up here on the left side of the Summon search bar, basically, and they're always there. So in terms of what you might want to use these for, I feel like you probably don't want to use them for things that are really granular, like only looking for stuff on education necessarily, or looking for a certain content type, unless it's a really important content type. Because these, are always there, and as you add more, it just extends this list. They seem like they'd be more useful for individual collections or different locations that are significant, where someone's going to want to jump in and just search for that. Or you could, I suppose, use it to do a field limited search as well. So that's kind of how scopes work. And the thing about scopes is they're sort of the opposite, where a search box lives in one place and it's always there and only there. Scopes are everywhere your summon is, but what they can't do is be in a search box right now, as I understand it. So if you wanted to put them in a search box, and for example, the default search box on our library homepage is pre-scoped to leave book reviews out, but we couldn't put these scopes in the search box on our library homepage because it's not like the summon. So anyway, I think they're really interesting. I think we might consider using them, but that's one of their limitations, that right now, I think in a search widget or search box, your scopes won't be there. So people have to actually be on the main Summon platform or do a Summon search to see the scopes. So, okay, so those are some things that we find are pretty useful. Definitely like using the production environment like extensively to, the preview environment extensively to try things out, have a no risk way to experiment with all kinds of stuff. And then, using scoped search boxes to direct people to certain kinds of content, using best bets to make sure that things appear or are accessible. And we may look at scope searches like search scopes as well. So I think that's what we had. So. And I'm happy to talk with anybody about any of this or other aspects of our Summon implementation. So,
Great, we'll head back into the presentation. So
let me stop
Jake.
share. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. All right. Let's head back into these slides. And Zach will take things over with automatic content ingestion.
Thanks. So one of the things that we'd like to do here is have a good reliance on perpetual access materials, because there are certain things that have to maintain currency, especially with the nursing program for accreditation. It's like every 5 years. And so really, instead of purchasing a ton of ebook titles, we'll just do perpetual access. So it's only purchased if it gets accessed. And then part of that would be that every time it's purchased, it's automatically ingested into Summon from the things we've purchased. And so another thing we did was we made individual repositories in Summon for our archive material. And so whenever that gets a new archival item gets placed in the system, it's automatically it's automatically updated every day. So every day I get this little Summon ingestion report, and it tells me how many records went in and if there were any exceptions. And if there's an exception, you just have to go into Summon and kind of isolate it and see why it's not working, and it's really rare. So basically, every day I get this report of how many ebook titles were added or removed, and then I send that up the chain to my boss or whatever, and the coordinator will see if we should purchase more titles from perpetual access by just getting them outright. And so it was helpful because all that stuff is constantly going in or out based off of licensing agreements or being updated by staff here. And we were able to do that, like use these content ingestion reports to figure out exactly how much stuff's going in and out on a daily basis and how well it's going in. So I started doing that. And this is basically what I did. If you go to the next slide. So if you look on the image there, under automatic holdings updates, you'll see I have 2 of them there. There's eBook Central, and then there's eBook Central Perpetual Access. And so when I go into Summon and I turn those on, every ebook license that gets picked up or dropped does so. They check it on a daily basis, checked on a daily basis, and then they send me the content ingestion report. And so if you go to that Summon area there, what I highlighted, it's under that admin console. And when you go into that, there's the other tabs that you saw or that Jake had earlier. One of them, the last one, is this content ingestion report. And so if you go into it and activate it, you can then determine who gets the report. So first you click on the options. So you want to get the report enabled. You add email addresses. I don't know if you can really see it, but underneath the subscriber list is me and my boss. So we're the only ones that get it. And then the content report enabled means that they get to send it to us every day. Actually went through this way quicker than I thought I would, but basically it allows me to keep tabs on things that based on currency. So that way, if we do need something that is within that 5-year threshold, I can easily find it and have it ingested within, a day. And that really helps me, stay up to snuff about how many things are going in and out of Sun based off of titles. Also, recently we've been really dropped print material or print serials and journals in favor of all e-resources. And so that actually helped a lot too with content ingestion reports, because how frequently they publish them for the ones that we're purchasing or we're paying a database for, like Flipster from EBSCO. They'll automatically update whenever new issues come out, and it's been helpful as well too, because it leaves me a chance to maintain currency and know that somebody asked me how up to date everything is, I can say it's basically up to the day. Another thing though is when you do turn on the content ingestion, especially from those perpetual access titles, I have to contact the vendor, or I go into my admin console for the vendors. Just depends how many you have, what permissions and who does. So I have my you know, an admin account for EBSCO and ProQuest. So every semester I go in and turn it on, and then when there's a break, I turn it off, because if somebody accesses something while we're not in school, it doesn't really get bought yet. Like the coordinator just gets a huge bill when she comes back. So I turn it off in between breaks. So then that way she doesn't come back and we've bought in like 10 perpetual access titles and they're hundreds of dollars, and then I'll get yelled at. Other than that, it tends to just work out really well, because I always know how much money we're actually spending on the perpetual access titles as well. So I went a little fast, but that's basically what I've been doing, is just so that way turning on automatic ingestion, getting everything up to date, and so shoring up any ebooks that might have had older licenses and are no longer current and can't be used in the curriculum.
Awesome. And then we'll hand things over to Taylor now.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Really awesome explanation of how you work with Summon on a day-to-day and some cool tips and tricks. So now I will talk to everyone about Summon, some of those new features that have come out in the past, year and a half that I think would be really great for you to know about, and that you can actually go ahead today and activate for your institution's Summon instance. So I'm going to walk you through these features, their main functionality, review some key benefits and how they impact the library and your workflows, and also share how you can actually take the next step and activate these features in your own Summon instance. So for the bulk of these today, I'll talk about these three. The first two, you'll need to know how to get into your Client Center, which most of us should know. And for the last one, you'll be activating this in the administration console. So that's where Jake took us through that live demo. So just for housekeeping, but for the first one, we'll go to the next slide and I'll talk about Auto Holdings and specifically Springer Nature, which is a newer provider. So just to recap, for those of you who might not know what Auto Holdings is, it's, long name of it is Automatic Holdings Feature. We call it Auto Holdings for short. And this is basically a feature that automates the workflow for managing ebook collections across your Ex Libris services like 360 Core and Summon. So what that means is once activated, instead of manually going into the Client Center and uploading your holdings for your library, once this is activated, Auto Holdings will ensure that your ebooks collections from a specific list of providers are automatically updated on a regular basis. So Jake actually touched on this earlier on, or Zach did, my apologies. But basically, this updated holdings, it flows through, Summon, 360 Link, the eJournal portal, and it's done through a KBART-based exchange. And some of the updates it includes is, new additions, removed titles, updated titles, and configuring Auto Holdings. It's a way to ensure that your collections are always up to date in the Client Center. So this is not for all of the providers. It's only for a specific subset of providers. So some of those are, ProQuest eBook Central, Ovid, Elsevier, Wiley, Taylor and Francis. And now we recently just added Springer Nature. And in Q4, so little bit of background, for Summon and 360, our products, we work off of a quarterly release schedule. So there's always new functionality being released every quarter. In this year's Q4 release, we will now be adding Project Muse to those providers. So some of the key benefits for doing this and why you would want to activate Auto Holdings, it it automates the process of updating those ebook holdings for you. So it'll streamline your library workflows and free up your library staff to focus on other tasks, which is awesome. And then also it ensures a both timely and accurate update of your holdings without the need for manual intervention. And of course, those automatically updated holdings are discoverable in Summon, so it also improves your users' access to resources and avoids things like broken links, etc. So actually, yeah, one more, I can speak to this here, but so yeah, it works with regular updates. So, you know, the ebook providers send us the updated title lists to Ex Libris, and then we then match them with the titles in your 360 knowledge base. So then once the process is set up, it automatically updates your holdings in the Client Center. And once enabled, and actually, Devin, want to pop back for a second to the previous slide? Yeah, this is what I'm trying to show. So the automatic holdings update section in the Client Center, that will notify you what's different. So you can see these green links with the new label. And if you want to figure out, you know, what's different, what's changed, you can then click into that link. It'll take you to a database details page for that resource, and you can look into, you know, what automatic updates were made. And then we can go to the next slide. Thank you. Awesome. So, like I mentioned, this is for specific providers only. So I have a link at the bottom of the slide to Auto Holdings. It's a knowledge article that details what providers are included with Auto Holdings. But for this specific example, you know, I'll walk you through how to configure this. I'm going to use Springer Nature since that was our most recently added provider. So it's going to be different for all the providers, but they different in terms of like what data. So you'll need to configure each provider to be set up, but it's a similar process to do so. So for example, for Springer Nature, the first step is you'll want to reach out to the provider. So reach out to Springer and obtain what we call an Auto Holdings token. You'll then take that token, you will open up the Client Center, and you will search for two databases. So the first is Springer Online Journals Complete for those e-journals, and then also Springer Books. And with each of those databases, once you find them in the Client Center, just, you know, there might be a few more databases that pop up. You'll want to make sure and confirm that the ones you're clicking have the correct database ID, which is what I have in the parentheses here. So SOJ and SBO, those are going to be the proper databases for configuring Auto Holdings. So you'll go into that database, you will select, you know, we subscribe, and then click, we only subscribe to some of these titles or only selected titles. And that's where you will go ahead and take the next step and enter in your Auto Holdings token that you can see here in this picture. So once you've done that, you'll click save, and basically, you know, it will take one index refresh in order to start providing automatic holdings. So typically initial setup, you know, once you enable it for a specific provider, initial setup and configuration are completed within a few days with that index refresh, like I mentioned. And then from then on, you know, after the setup, you know, your holdings will automatically be regularly updated during the update cycle, which is often weekly. So with each different provider, you know, they each have their own timelines. So you can, again, check out this knowledge article. It'll tell you when each provider is updating their holdings. But, you know, for Springer, I know these are typically updated on a weekly basis, you know, usually over the weekend. For ProQuest and eBook Central, holdings are updated daily. So that's really nice. And then, you know, Taylor and Francis, I'm pretty sure those are weekly updates. So they're all different, you know, but since, you know, Ex Libris, Clarivate is part of ProQuest, you know, that one's updated a little more frequently. But again, if you want some more details on those specific providers, you know, instructions for configuring, when their updates are, check out that Auto Holdings knowledge article. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. I know we will have time at the end to touch on those. So, but the next feature I wanted to talk about and highlight is Summon's new integration with Unpaywall. So with this new integration, this now gives you the ability to activate Unpaywall open access content as a database within the Client Center. And one of the key benefits to this is that Unpaywall will now show as a database facet in the summon search. So this enhancement is really designed to improve open access content in Summon, making this easier for your users and patrons to easily filter their search results and include OA content available through Unpaywall. And, some of the benefits to this: increased accessibility, so your users can access a wider range of scholarly articles and resources without those subscription barriers, which is nice. You also get enhanced discoverability, so OA content is more visible, easier to find, with promoting greater usage and circulation. And you're supporting research and learning. So by integrating that OA content, we support, you're supporting the academic community's need for accessible and reliable information. Next slide. And so for best practices around managing open access content in Summon, we recommend, two things. So I recommend activating that Unpaywall database we just touched on in the last slide. And also, if you're really getting into best practices with open access, also activating the directory of open access journals in the Client Center. So these are the two main ones we suggest. And of course, there's other options for open OA databases to be activated, but these two are the best if you don't want to spend a lot of time, digging through, subscriptions and activating, doing a lot of activations in the Client Center. So how to actually do this: similar to auto holdings, this is configured through the Client Center. So you'll want to log into your Client Center. You will then want to go up to the top to our e-catalog. You'll want to search by database and name contains. That's important to know, because sometimes just searching the e-catalog, the default settings are on, searching specific journals. So just make sure you're searching for the database, name contains, and then Unpaywall. And here's a great example in this picture of where you can see the database code. So, for Unpaywall, this should be the only one that pops up, but you'll just want to double check that, it is the right database ID. And, you'll do the same search for directory of open access journals. So you'll search for that, make sure the DB ID is DOA. And once you find the database, the correct one, and you double check the database code, you will go click into the database and you'll click Edit Status, change the status to subscribed, and save the changes. So that's all you have to do. One thing to note: when you're in there, you can customize display settings. So I would just double check to make sure that, under display in, it is displaying in Summon. So just make sure that is checked. It should be, and then save your changes. So and before we move on to the next one, some just housekeeping about Unpaywall, good to know tidbits is, Unpaywall provides access to legally archived open access articles. It sources content from reputable repositories and journal sites, and ensures that all materials are freely available and legally accessible. So it includes, millions of OA articles from over 50,000 providers, or from 50,000 journals and repositories. And some of the sources Unpaywall gathers its data from are, open access repositories. So harvesting content from repositories like PubMed and other IRs. Also publisher websites. So it checks these publisher websites for open access versions of the articles. And then also using Crossref and DataCite. So Obviously, when it comes to open access, each library, you're going to have your own view on open access. If you want to, make this accessible to your patrons, there's plenty of pros and cons. So I would just suggest that, for your own library, weigh the benefits and potential drawbacks to see if this is a good fit for your institution. But by carefully selecting reputable OA journals like Unpaywall and Directory of Open Access Journal and integrating them thoughtfully into your collections, you can really take advantage of all the benefits of open access and try and mitigate those disadvantages. So that's a little bit about Unpaywall and also open access content with your summon. And yeah, next slide, Devin. Great. So the last feature I will talk about before talking about, just general housekeeping tips is the bulk export search results new feature. So basically now users can export large number of search results, potentially thousands in Summon with one go. In my picture, you can see here, it's right when you're searching within Summon, under the Summon search box, you see that export results section. So we support multiple formats, including CSV, Excel, RAS, and even BibTeX 1. So one of the things, when exporting, you can definitely specify an email address to receive the exported file. And the benefits of this are to, save time by allowing your users to handle large data sets without the need to export them individually, which is, particularly useful for things like comprehensive literature reviews, large-scale research projects, etc. And another benefit is that enhanced research management. So users and patrons can maintain and organize their search results outside of Summon, facilitating better data management and integration with other research tools. So by leveraging this new feature, you can streamline your research process, and improve the management of extensive search results. And to configure this one's easy. You just are going to go into the Client Center, open up that Summon administration console that Jake demoed earlier, and then enable the allow downloaded search results. And that's it. So those are some of the 3 that I wanted to highlight for everyone today. They're sometimes overlooked within our releases. So, and they take a little bit of configuration. So I just wanted to walk through and make sure everything was clear and our questions were answered. Beyond subscribing to content in the Client Center and enabling new features, we have a robust Summon community and a lot of resources available for you to take advantage of and to really explore to continue to build your skill set with Summon. So if you're new to Summon, these are our general housekeeping tips. The first one I wanted to highlight is our Summon LibGuide. So this is really nice if you're new to Summon, or maybe there's someone new at your library who is tasked with the management of Summon. This Summon LibGuide is a great starting place that provides a centralized location for all of your Summon related resources. So, we offer tutorials, best practices, tips and tricks in order for, proper management and to help your users maximize the benefits of Summon. And, the LibGuide is great because it often includes latest updates, the newest features, and also support information. So you can stay up to date with features and enhancements that we come out with throughout the year. So that's the first one I would bookmark. The second resource is, I recommend joining the Summon listserv if you're not already on it. It is a way to connect with other Summon users and to share your experiences, tips, and best practices. So, when you subscribe to it, you'll receive emails from the Summon listserv and receive notifications about new enhancements, release info. So not only interacting with other Summon customers and seeing, what are their experiences and questions, but our product managers talk through and communicate through the listserv. So disseminating release information, content updates, just really all the updates you'll need to know if you're managing Summon. And also, you know, with the listserv, there's collaborative problem solving. So engaging in really nice, cool discussions that can help you maybe troubleshoot and resolve issues, you know, before going to support, and, you know, help you make light of all the features and improve the use of Summon for your library. The next is, I would definitely recommend keeping up with our release schedule. So I mentioned we have a quarterly release schedule for 360 and Summon. You know, we have a dedicated page that is just for housing those recordings, the slides, if you know, don't have time to look back. But basically, this will make sure you stay informed about features and improvements. And so every year we do in February, like a what's yearly roadmap preview. So you'll get to see for the entire year what's on the roadmap, what's going to be implemented. And then we go into each quarterly release, you know, reviewing what was the functionality, how do I configure it? And it's a really nice opportunity for you to get some, like, you know, one-on-one time with the product management. You can ask questions. It's really nice and interactive. So definitely bookmark that page. You know, one of the things that I didn't talk about today, but will be implemented in our next year's roadmap is the Summon AI Research Assistant. So something to set your eyes on for the future. This is set to launch in Q1 of 2025. You know, and it's going to be an AI powered tool designed to enhance the research experience. So definitely bookmark that page. Cool stuff that's up and coming. And if you don't know, or if you're not already a member, I would recommend getting a support login. So, and submitting a ticket to support. Support is going to be, you know, your one-stop shop for issue resolution, you know, tracking progress with tickets that you've updated or submitted. So whether it's broken links, you know, assessing issues within Summon, maybe it's content updates. So metadata corrections, customization requests. So, you know, feature requests too. There's a lot you can do and go to with support. So, you know, we always recommend you create your login with support, and that's what you are submitting tickets with. You can track them, and if you ever need to, we do have an escalation path. So if something maybe hasn't gotten addressed and you're wondering, you know, hey, this is a priority, high priority for my library, I want to escalate this, we have an escalation path you can follow. So definitely take advantage of that as well. And the last one I want to go over is the Summon Ideas Exchange. So this is where you can submit ideas to, you know, product management, the Summon community, and this will actually be taken into account of, you know, what are the new features for next year? What do we want to put in the roadmap? We actually go ahead and use all the great ideas that the Summon community submits. We have a whole voting process where, you know, we choose what features we will actually, you know, go to move on and make a reality. So submit your ideas. You know, you can also influence development. So not only can you submit your own ideas, but you can vote on other people's suggestions, which is really nice to get involved. And, you know, this is great because the ideas with the most support are considered for inclusion in the yearly roadmap. Just basically ensuring that Summon evolves based on your users' needs. So in conclusion, we explored some of the newest features available for your institution's Summon. We covered automatic holdings, which streamlines ebook management, unpaywall integration, which enhances access to open access content. And also, you know, here with this general housekeeping, we discussed some best practices for managing Summon and keeping up with our latest and greatest, and, you know, taking advantage of our, you know, Summon news that comes out. So with that, you know, I'll pass it back to you, Devin, to talk about, you know, Summon codes, review some past webinars, and then anything for the Q&A.
Sounds good. All right. So Sorry, before Q&A, I just wanted to point out a few places on our website that you can find information related to Summon. So we have our Discovery Tools page. It's in our mega menu under the For Librarians section, but this will give you all the database codes for our resources that you can add to Summon. So if you ever have a question about it and want to email the help desk, check this section first. If we don't have a particular code on there, or if you have a question about it, feel free to email us after, but just letting you all know this is available. We also have our Summon search boxes towards the end of this Discovery Tools page and LibGuides templates. And then we have a Summon implementation page that gives you a little bit of detail about Summon, which is something that is a discovery layer that you have for free that we have through our subscription with agreement with Procrust. And then below we have past webinars that we've offered. So last fall we did a Summon Basics 1 and Summon Basics 2. Those recordings are there. And so this recording will also be up on that page for later use. And if your library is interested in signing up for Summon and you attended this webinar, just know that you can email the help desk and we can put you in touch with the folks at Ex Libris and Clarivate and get that started. Any questions about Summon? I know we covered a lot of ground and how you can use these different tools within the resource, but happy to field any questions. What I will say as well is in the follow-up email, I'll include Zach, Jake, and Taylor's contact info. So if you want to email Jake about the pre-scope searches, if you want to email Zach about the automatic content ingestion, how Rowan Cabarrus is doing that, and if you want to email Taylor about any of the quarterly updates that she shared, the new AI tool that Summon will be piloting at the beginning of next year, you'll have everybody's contact info to reach out to them. Also, in that feedback survey tomorrow, please feel free to share any future topics for Summon webinars. We've done the basics before and you have those recordings. But if you'd like more advanced webinars like this, hearing different examples from member libraries, any suggestions are welcome. And David, thanks for sharing in the chat that if you're using a proxy, also make sure to check omit proxy from this database for unpaywall and the directory of open access journals. Good tip there. All right. Well, if we have no questions, know that you can reach out to us later. And I hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesday afternoon. Again, you'll receive the recording tomorrow with the slides and a feedback survey, as well as the presenter's contact info. Thank you all so much for joining today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks to my co-hosts as well. Take care.
Bye-bye.